everybody, it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy here. We've reached another Friday, so of course I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody out there. Now, every year right around this time, I always do a Hallmark-style holiday romance film recommendation list. Never fear, I am absolutely going to do my annual Hallmark-style holiday romance rec list. It's just not this week. This week, I thought I'd change things up a little bit. This week, I wanted to delve into modern holiday classic romances and what makes them a modern classic. Because when I think about classic Christmas movies and Christmas romances, I'm usually thinking of things like It's a Wonderful Life, Christmas in Connecticut, White Christmas, all of these films that were made in like the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the sort of golden era of Hollywood. But, you know, when you think about really solid holiday films, there were a ton that kind of came out of the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, like a ton that I watch every single year, but I don't necessarily attach the whole classic descriptor to them, but they really kind of are. And I know lots of my friends also watch them year after year. And so what makes these ones classic films for, say, the new generation? Anyway, these films are all going to be available solely on DVD and Blu-ray, so no streaming options this week. And we'll be right back to our usual style next week. But I really felt very strongly about this after having quite a few discussions with friends and fellow movie lovers. You know, these movies are really great, and I think some of the younger generation haven't necessarily delved into some of them just because they don't necessarily end up on those, AFI classic lists all the time or anything. So, as always, these films are available entirely for free with the your Milan-Berlin library card. And as I mentioned, they are solely available on DVD and Blu-ray, but I'm going to put the links directly to those placehold items in the description below. So you just have to click it, log into your account, and then you'll be able to place holds for all of them. So without any further ado, let's jump into the Rex. Okay, jumping right in with what is actually my youngest film. This one was released in 2005, so it makes it about 17 years old, and that is The Family Stone. Now, of all the Rex this week, this one probably has the most drama to it. It definitely is very comedic and has lots of light moments with tons of comedy, but it does have a lot of family relationship drama going on too. So it definitely has that sort of classic dramatic feel. This one is anchored by Sarah Jessica Parker, fresh off of her Sex and the City fame. She's definitely at her peak at this point. It also includes Dermot Mulroney. It has Diane Keaton, who is glorious in everything. Claire Danes is in it. Luke Wilson at his Luke Wilson best, that sort of chill, kind of slackery style performance. And he does it really well, and it's very effective in his character in this. And so the whole storyline with this is Dermot Mulroney's character is the eldest son of the Stone family. He wants to propose to his girlfriend, but he needs to ask his mother for the family ring. He decides to bring his girlfriend, Sarah Jessica Parker, home for the holidays. She is unbelievably uptight, like painfully so. And it's almost like a throwback to that sort of over-the-top style, except you totally know somebody who behaves the way that this woman does as well. So it's a very real thing. It just feels overly done. They head off to New England to meet the family, but her anxiety just grows and grows. She's already uptight about everything, and she knows that this is going to be a horrible experience. And so the whole movie is just her sort of figuring out how to find her place within this very close-knit, very New England family. She, in fact, gets so uptight about things, she invites her younger sister to come with them and to spend the holidays with her new in-law family. And that opens a whole new can of worms. And it's also that decision that sort of opens up both a ton of drama and a lot of comedy. And that's what's really interesting about this one. So you have these very screwball comedy style tropes going on a lot of the time, but you do have some legit thematic drama happening at the same time. Like things that you definitely will come across in real life at the holidays with families where people butt heads and topics are discussed that are definitely going to not all have, where people are not going to have all the same opinions. So those elements feel very, very real, and they're explored a lot. And you do have some really interesting discussion in the film about those themes, but you also have like absolutely ludicrous comedic moments too. So, at one point, two family members are chasing each other around a dining table, like trying to beat one another up. It's an interesting juxtaposition, and for whatever reason, it absolutely works. So you have both these throwbacks to old style comedy going on with lots of slapstick, but you also have a very, very modern sensibility mixed in. Um, I do think a huge portion of why this movie works so well is because of the cast, and they all have a really good chemistry together, both the familial relationships. The relationship between each of the individual kids and their mother is such a big deal. I mean, Diane Keaton plays the matriarch to a T. She's so perfect in this role. And, watching each of those little stories sort of unfold is really, really kind of beautiful and presents a lot of lovely but bittersweet moments. Um, and then the relationships between each of the siblings, and then each of the siblings with the potential new member of the family, and then the new member of the family's sister. It gets very complicated, and there's almost like, I don't want to say Shakespearean, but a little bit of that sort of twisting and turning to it as well. And so overall, this one just ends up being kind of one of those holiday dramedies that is executed incredibly well. It sort of pushes boundaries with holiday film themes because a lot of times you don't see these things being discussed in holiday movies. And just is a lot of fun. Somehow it manages to cling to the fun. There's even a moment where there's a brief dance break, and Sarah Jessica Parker is dancing and singing it to Right Back Where We Started From by Maxine Nightingale. And every time I see that scene, I'm humming that song for the rest of the day. I am, in fact, sort of playing it in my head right now. So yeah, there's definitely a sense of fun. So you get that, but you also get those really lovely, bittersweet beats between the mother and all of the kids, and the mother and her husband, and it's just a really well done film. So if you're looking for something that has both comedy and drama, romance, unexpected twists, and a lot of throwbacks to old school holiday films, check out The Family Stone. It's a really great one, and it's available on both DVD and Blu-ray. Okay, moving on to my next recommendation, and that is 1995's While You Were Sleeping. While You Were Sleeping is one of those holiday movies that I have to watch every single year. I don't think I've missed a year watching it since it was released again in 1995. So I've seen it more than 20 times. It's just one of those films that I never get tired of. I just think it's so cute. Of all the films that I rec today, this one is probably the closest to your classic style Hollywood era romance. It just has that sort of like light fluffy shine to it, and it's just so cute. It really is just so stinking cute. While You Were Sleeping follows Lucy Eleanor Moderatz, who is played by Sandra Bullock. She is quite lonely and isolated as a railway token taker. She has this sort of sad but adorable one-sided crush on a passenger who comes in every day. He has no idea who she is. He just passes her his token and gets on the train. But she looks forward to seeing him, and it's sad. She says he's the brightest part of her day at one point. Right around Christmas, he gives her his token like normal. things happen and he ends up passed out on the rail tracks. She hops down, she rescues him, she goes with him to the hospital, and a series of miscommunications and circumstances happen, and she's mistaken for his fiance. Plus, uh, this guy who she has a crush on, whose name is Peter, uh, and is played by Peter Gallagher, makes it super simple. So Peter ends up in a coma. His family comes into the hospital, is introduced to her, and she doesn't know how to explain or what to do when they all just assume she's the fiance after being told that. And the more time that goes by, the harder it is for her to figure out how to explain that it was all a mistake. She's not the fiance. Um, so we've got, there's definitely a bit of a fairy tale vibe to this too, because you've got this lonely, isolated woman who all of a sudden has this big, bright, boisterous family, and she loves them as much as she could, more than she could ever love this guy that she has no real knowledge of. They embrace her, and she finally doesn't feel so alone, and it's just really cute and lovely. Uh, of course, with Peter being in a coma, she feels like she's got a little bit of leeway, but she's still always struggling. In walks in Peter's brother Jack, and then everything just goes crazy at that point. And you've got your rather classic golden era Hollywood screwball comedy romance going on at that point between Lucy and Jack. Jack, who's under the impression that she's his brother's fiance, but he still likes her, and Lucy liking this guy that she really shouldn't. And the two of them also butting heads pretty constantly because, at first Jack absolutely doesn't trust her. There's just a lot going on, but it's so, like, again, it's just executed in a very, very well done manner. So things that are, kind of tropey, predictable, work really well simply because the chemistry is exceptional and the writing is done really, really well. The dialogue is excellent. It's super snappy, and it definitely has that sort of like Hepburn Tracy, Grant Hepburn vibe to it. It feels like clever and just always on point. This is one of those big movies for Bullock. It's at the very beginning of her career. The year prior to the release of While You Were Sleeping, she'd just been in Speed. And this one sort of, cemented her place as an actual box office draw. She is the big name in this movie. Like, she's the anchor. So, and it ended up being a massive box office and critical success. She even ended up with a Golden Globe nomination, which is a little bit rare for a romantic comedy. And then, of course, we know later on in life she won massive accolades for Blindside, but she was getting noticed even back in the early 90s. You've got Sandra Bullock as Lucy. You've got Bill Pullman playing Jack. Peter Gallagher, as I mentioned, plays Peter. But you also, in that family, have Jack Warden as a character, Glynis Johns, who is an actual golden era Hollywood actress playing a grandmother. You have Peter Boyle. I mean, it just is one of those casts that's just crazy, and they all just mesh so well. And it just, watching it gives you the warm fuzzies. Like, what can I say? It just really, really does. But in a way where the acting is so on point and all of the beats just happen so perfectly that I think that propels this movie into classic status. And like I said, I watch it every year and I never get tired of it. And I have tons of friends who also feel the same way. So if you're looking for something that definitely has that classic Hollywood rom-com vibe, but you're looking for something with like people you still know and recognize, because these faces are faces check out While You Were Sleeping. If you haven't seen it in a while, definitely do a refresher. If you've never seen it before, why not? It's awesome. So yeah, While You Were Sleeping from 1995, it's a must watch. All right, moving on to 2001 with Bridget Jones's Diary. Bridget Jones's Diary is just a fantastic, fantastic vehicle for Renee Zellweger. Based on Helen Fielding's novel of the same name, This movie follows Bridget Jones. She's a early 30s something spinster, and that's what she calls herself. She is British and she has kind of a dead end job. She's not really going places when we first meet her. It's the holiday season, and then something happens to sort of push her to make massive change in her life. So we're following an entire year of her life. It's bookended by the holiday season in one year and the next. And it just has all of these ridiculous, outlandish moments that 100% work because Renee Zellweger is exceptional in this movie. I mean, she really does an unbelievably ridiculously solid job as Bridget Jones. And then the supporting cast is fantastic too. You have Hugh Grant playing one of her love interests, and you have, oh, for heaven's sake, Colin Firth playing her other love interest, and it's just absolute screen magic. Now, this is also based on Pride and Prejudice to a degree, but there's the meta level of the fact that Helen Fielding, who wrote the book, also always felt that her Mark Darcy character, who is of course Mr. Darcy, was played by Colin Firth, who also played the sort of quintessential Mr. Darcy in the British miniseries of Pride and Prejudice as well. So you've got these odd sort of like meta call outs and shout outs at the same time as you've got your primary storyline going on. It's kind of messy but totally fun, and it really kind of meshes well with the whole Bridget Jones concept, because at the heart of things, she's kind of a hot mess. Kind of is putting it lightly. She's definitely a hot mess, but she's lovable in that, and it's odd because she reacts to situations and responds in ways that I don't think many people would. However, when you're watching it, you find her totally relatable. That, I think, is primarily because Renee Zellweger makes you love her in this film. And she's not in any way annoying, because I generally, with some of the choices that she makes, I definitely would side-eye any other character, but for whatever reason, you don't. You feel for her. You empathize and you sympathize, and you want her to find her way. So you keep seeing her do these things and it continues to be funny. It doesn't get boring. It doesn't get irritating. It's like, next time it'll be okay. Next time it'll be better. And when she does start to hit her stride, you really cheer her on. As mentioned, Hugh Grant plays one of her other love interests. He's the guy that she's mad for at the very beginning of the film. And it's kind of, so when this came out, Hugh Grant had almost always played the good guy, like the sort of very British, almost foppish kind of male lead. He was very nice. He was very sweet. And the character in this is not that. He's definitely kind of a jerk. But one of those guys that you can see why so many people like him. He's a very charismatic jerk at the same time. So it's interesting, and he totally sinks his teeth into that aspect of the role. I think he enjoyed the chance to not play, nice stereotypical British period piece dude for once, and he just definitely revels in playing this bad boy, and it comes across so well. You don't necessarily like his character, who is Daniel Cleaver, by the by. Sorry about that. You don't necessarily like Daniel, but you see why Bridget does. And you also see why she has the kind of relationship she does with Mark Darcy at the same time. The two of them just butt heads from the beginning. It's, as mentioned, this is a very modern version of Pride and Prejudice, and it makes very much sense, the interactions with all of the different characters. Besides just being kind of a ridiculously fun rom-com, you've got a lot of interesting themes discussed that certainly were not discussed in Golden Era Hollywood films. But you also just have this central character who is really trying to come into her own, and no matter what ludicrous mistakes she makes, you root for her. And I think that's really enjoyable. And the fact that it's bookended by the holidays, you get this complete cycle of a year. And even when you're in the midst of summer with her, it still has this holiday vibe, and I really enjoy that. So if you're looking for something fun, a very much a grown-up holiday romance movie, check out Bridget Jones's Diary. When you find Austen contemporizations, sometimes they only kind of halfway go there, but this one totally does. It really spins Austen into its own thing, and I absolutely love the way that they've done that here. So make sure, if you're an Austen fan and you like that sort of adaptation, check out Bridget Jones's Diary. If you like romance, if you like humor, if you just like a good movie, Bridget Jones's Diary is where it's at. Make sure you check it out. It's a must watch. All right, I have saved the best for last, and that is 1989's When Harry Met Sally. Now, When Harry Met Sally isn't a movie that's just about the holidays. It actually takes place over the course of years in the lives of these two main characters, but it still definitely feels like a holiday film. It's sort of anchored by holiday events, so I think it definitely fits. I watch it around the holiday time every year, and several of my friends do, and I think it does lend itself well to holiday screenings. So in When Harry Met Sally, we are following originally two recent college grads played by Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan as Harry and Sally, respectively. They they don't know each other when they first meet in this movie, but they end up agreeing to drive cross country from California to New York together. Uh, and man, they hate each other. They do not get along. And it's not one of those, oh, it's only covering this really great chemistry. No, no, they are not meant to be in a room together. Which I think is really, really interesting, because you generally don't have that. You almost always have the, oh, but they actually like each other thing. No, you can tell these characters, it's not like that. Fast forward 10 years, and they randomly meet again, only this time they seem to find some commonalities between one another. Now, some of the animosity from the very beginning is set off by the idea that Harry's character believes that men and women absolutely cannot be friends. This results in, like, I would assume miles long arguments, since they're coming from one side of the country to the other. But that is a big part of why they just can't seem to mesh. And after that 10 years, so many things have happened to them that when they realize they could be friends, they decide to work really hard to do that. And I love that aspect of this film. They have exceptional chemistry together. Both Billy Crystal and Meg Ryan do such good jobs with their individual characters, who are so different from one another. But at the same time, it doesn't feel at the beginning like, oh, they definitely were just hiding the fact that they were in love. No, they really do go from friends to lovers, and it's sort of a really interestingly illustrated journey with them that we get to watch. You have some incredibly funny dialogue going on. The two of them are so snappy together, but really, that kind of dialogue is Billy Crystal's bread and butter. Whenever he's given good writing, he just runs with it, and he's so incredible in this. There are so many very quotable moments and things that come out of this guy's mouth. But that said, Meg Ryan, she's kind of playing the straight man to the funny guy, and it's a hard role to play, but she does it very, very well. She never seems flat. She always is very much in her character. She has plenty of moments to shine. There's some really iconic scenes with her in it. And I would say this film feels very much like sort of that next generation of golden era Hollywood movie. It feels very classic, but it really goes out there with theme. It's much more risque than anything you would ever find in a golden era film. Uh, it definitely like plays around with those more body tones and scenes, and it always works. It's definitely for a newer, at the time especially, sensibility. But even 30 years down the line from the 80s, this movie still works. It's still clever. It's still funny. It's still pretty relevant thematically, too. People are still going to be dealing with things like friendships, divorce, death, uh, jobs and job insecurity, all of these things, midlife crises, all of those elements are still things that people are dealing with today, and still thematically relevant in film and television. I mean, those are still topics covered today. So, for a 30 plus year old movie, it's still got a whole lot of magic and a whole lot of relevance. Um, as mentioned, it does have some really pivotal moments that take place at the holidays, and those moments are great, and it's very like it feels big cinema at those times, even though it's just a rom-com. And I don't know, I guess that's part of why it feels so old Hollywood in places, besides that snappy dialogue, which I feel like is kind of a throwback to Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, or Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn movies, those classic screwball comedies that, you know, it's almost more about the dialogue than anything else, and how those two can sort of cleverly interplay with one another with their words. Um, so if you are looking for something that is still relevant, that is just as funny as it is romantic, that has an incredible cast, like I said, Billy Crystal, just such a gem, uh, that has a lot of charm and a lot of heart, but is definitely a grown-ups movie. Check out When Harry Met Sally, especially if you've not seen it before, or if it's been years. It's so good. It's still so good, I'm telling you. Again, When Harry Met Sally, fantastic movie, must watch. All right, so those were my modern Christmas romance classics. If you have any recommendations for titles that you think would fit that category, please comment with those below. If you have any recommendations for themes you'd like to see me cover in the future, definitely share those. As always, thank you so, so much for joining me. I absolutely adore putting these lists together. This week was such a treat. All of these picks, again, are available on DVD and Blu-ray, and the links to those placehold options are going to be right in the comments as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Once more, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.